was colder than usual when 26-year-old Daniel Harris took the job at Hollow Creek Farm. The farm had been abandoned for nearly 2 decades, sitting at the far end of Blackridge County, a place locals whispered about but never visited after dark. The owner, an old man named George Clayton, offered Daniel double pay to help restore the place. Daniel thought it was easy money, but from the first night, he realized Hollow Creek wasn't just any ordinary farm. It was alive with something that wasn't human. The house itself seemed to breathe. The wooden planks creaked even when no one moved, and the barn's rusty door swung open on its own, groaning as if the wind carried whispers from the dead. Daniel had been warned by the townsfolk, don't stay past midnight. The farm remembers, but he brushed it off, thinking it was just another local legend. On his first evening, as he unloaded tools, he noticed strange claw marks etched into the barn door. They weren't made by any animal he'd ever seen. 5 deep grooves, uneven and fresh. The smell of rotten hay mixed with something metallic, blood, faint but real. The old farmer George lived in a small cabin beside the barn. That night, George sat by the fire, staring blankly at an old photograph of his wife and daughter. When Daniel asked about them, George's hands trembled. They were taken by the barn, he muttered, his voice cracking. Daniel laughed nervously, thinking it was just a joke to scare the new guy. But the way George's eyes glistened told another story, one of real terror. As the clock hit midnight, a sound echoed across the fields. Woman screamed, distant but filled with unbearable pain. Daniel froze. George didn't move an inch, his eyes fixed on the barn window. "She's back," he whispered. "Don't go outside." But curiosity consumed Daniel. Against the old man's warning, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the fog-covered yard. The cold air bit into his skin as he approached the barn. The scream echoed again, louder this time, coming from inside. When he pushed the door open, the smell hit him like a wall, decay, mixed with something sweet, like flowers that had died long ago. His flashlight flickered. Inside the barn were old farming tools, broken wooden stalls, and a hanging lantern that swayed even though there was no breeze. Then he saw it, a faint shadow at the far corner, shaped like a woman in a torn white dress. Her back was turned, hair long and tangled, head twitching side to side. Daniel's hand shook as he whispered, "Hello, are you okay?" The figure stopped moving. Slowly her head turned, not her body, just her head, all the way around, until her hollow eyes met his. The air turned freezing. Daniel stumbled backward as the woman's voice echoed in his mind. "Why did you wake me?" The flashlight died. In the darkness, all he could hear was the sound of footsteps rushing toward him. Too fast to be human, he screamed and ran out, tripping over a pitchfork, scraping his leg open. As he looked back, the barn door slammed shut by itself. George was waiting at the cabin door, holding a shotgun but trembling. "You saw her, didn't you?" he said. "My wife. She never left this place," he explained through tears, that 20 years ago, his wife and daughter were murdered by someone who broke into the farm. Their bodies were buried near the barn, but every night since then, he heard their cries as if their souls were still trapped, begging for peace. Daniel wanted to leave, but the nearest town was 15 miles away, and the fog was so thick he could barely see his hands. George insisted he stay until sunrise, but neither of them could sleep. Around 3 a.m., the screams came again, this time louder, echoing from the fields. George loaded his gun and said, "If I die tonight, burn the barn." In this curse, Daniel followed him into the night, the 2 beams of their flashlights cutting through the mist. They reached the edge of the field where the earth looked freshly disturbed. Suddenly, the ground beneath George began to tremble. Something was moving under the soil, something big. Before Daniel could react, skeletal hands shot out, gripping George's ankles. He fired his shotgun, but the blast went nowhere. The soil burst open, revealing 2 decayed bodies, one of a woman, the other a small girl, their faces twisted, eyes wide open, mouths still screaming. George fell to his knees, sobbing, "I'm sorry. I never found you." The bodies crawled toward him, their bones cracking with each movement. Daniel tried to pull him away, but George didn't move. "Let me go," he whispered. "It's time." The earth swallowed them whole. The ground closed as if nothing had happened. The silence that followed was unbearable. Daniel ran back to the house and collapsed until morning. When the sun rose, there was no sign of George or the disturbed ground, just the old barn, quiet and still. The only thing new was the faint sound of a child's laughter echoing from inside. Days later, when the police arrived after Daniel reported what happened, they found no bodies, no graves, and no footprints. The official report said George Clayton vanished, presumed dead. The farm was sealed again. But here's the terrifying part. Months later, another group bought Hollow Creek Farm to rebuild it. On their first night, neighbors heard screams again exactly at midnight. Some say if you drive by the farm today, you can still see a light flickering in the barn and a woman in white, staring out the window, waiting for someone to listen to her pain. So, if you ever pass by an old abandoned farm and you hear a distant scream, don't look back. Some cries aren't meant to be heard, and some souls don't want to be found. And if you love true horror stories like this, real chilling and mysterious, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because the next chapter will take you even deeper into the darkness, where the line between the living and the dead disappears completely. Stay tuned. Chapter 2 is coming soon. The story of the Hollow Creek Farm spread quickly around town, a whispered tale everyone pretended not to believe, yet no one dared to test. About 80 miles away, another farm carried its own darkness, Ravenwood Acres, a vast land of dying cornfields and creaking windmills. It had been in the Dyer family for generations, but after the father, Benjamin Dyer, mysteriously vanished one harvest season, the place began to rot. His son, Eli Dyer, returned years later to sell the property. He wasn't a believer in ghost stories or curses. He was a practical man hardened by city life. But what he didn't know was that the land was waiting for him. First thing Eli noticed when he arrived was the Scarecrow. It stood at the far end of the field, taller than usual, dressed in a torn brown coat and a hat that looked too new for its age. Its face wasn't the typical burlap sack. Instead, it was covered with stitched leather, with button eyes and a grin crudely carved across the surface. The air was still, heavy, and thick with the scent of rain that never came. As Eli walked past the Scarecrow, he swore it tilted its head ever so slightly toward him. He froze. The windmill behind him creaked once, breaking the silence. Just the wind, he muttered, shaking it off. That night, as he settled into the old farmhouse, memories flooded back. His father's laughter, his mother's lullabies, the warmth that once filled the walls. But now everything smelled of damp wood and decay. At around midnight, he heard something tapping at the window, slow, deliberate. But there was nothing. When he stepped outside, flashlight in hand, the entire field looked like a black ocean under the moonlight. The Scarecrow was still standing where he'd seen it earlier. But something was off. It was closer, about 20 feet closer. Eli blinked hard, convinced his mind was playing tricks. He backed away, locking the door behind him. But the tapping returned, this time at the back door. The flashlight flickered again, and the house seemed to groan like it was alive. Eli whispered, "If this is some prank, it's not funny." No response, just the sound of straw rustling in the distance. The next morning, Eli found deep footprints in the soft soil outside his window, not human, not animal, just strange circular indents leading toward the barn. Against his better judgment, he followed them. Inside, everything was coated in dust and cobwebs, but there was a faint trail of fresh straw leading up to the loft. As he climbed, he found something that made his blood run cold, his father's old coat, hanging from a nail, torn and stained with something dark. Next to it, but this glove wasn't. Empty, inside it, he found something dry, brittle, and unmistakably human, a finger bone. Eli stumbled backward, clutching his stomach, gasping for air. Just a few feet away, its grin wider than before. That night, Eli decided to burn the damn thing. He poured gasoline around the Scarecrow and struck a match. The fire caught quickly, flames licking up the straw and fabric. But as the fire roared, he heard something that froze him in place, a scream, deep and guttural, coming from the burning figure. The Scarecrow's head twisted violently as its arms flailed like something was alive inside it. Eli fell backward in horror as the fire consumed it. By morning, only ashes remained. Relieved but shaken, he packed his bags, ready to leave. Yet when he turned to take one last look at the field, there it was, standing in the same spot as before. perfectly intact as if it had never burned. The grin on its stitched face looked wider, crueler. Eli drove to town in panic and told the sheriff everything. The sheriff, a tired old man named Carter, sighed and said, "You dyers never learn. That scarecrow's been there since your granddad's time. He made it from the skin of trespassers who stole his crops. Folks say he bound their spirits to protect the land." Eli's stomach turned. "You mean that thing is alive?" Carter looked away. "I mean it doesn't die." Ignoring every warning, Eli returned that night with a shovel, determined to dig up whatever secret the land was hiding. He started near the scarecrow's post, the soil cold and heavy. After an hour, his shovel hit something solid. He knelt down and brushed away the dirt, revealing a wooden box. Inside were old photographs of his family, their faces scratched out, and a rusted sickle with dried blood. But beneath that, he found something else, a skull, human. The moment he touched it, a voice whispered behind him, low and rasping, "You shouldn't have come back." Eli spun around. The scarecrow was gone. The post was empty. Then, from the shadows between the corn stalks, he saw movement, something walking toward him. Slow but steady, straw falling from its arms with every step. Eli dropped the shovel and ran toward the house, heart pounding so hard it drowned out his thoughts. He locked himself in and grabbed his father's old rifle. The floorboards creaked upstairs, then again closer. When he looked up the staircase, he saw a figure standing halfway down, the same brown coat, the same hat, but now the button eyes gleamed like wet glass. Eli fired once. The figure didn't flinch. He fired again, still nothing. Then it moved, lunging at him with unnatural speed. The next morning, the sheriff found the farmhouse door wide open, the rifle on the floor, and trails of straw leading out into the field. Eli Dyer was gone. They searched for weeks, but no trace of him was ever found. Yet every harvest season after that, the scarecrow's clothes looked newer, cleaner, and if you looked close enough, the face wasn't stitched burlap anymore. It looked like leather, human leather. To this day, people who pass by Ravenwood Acres at night claim to see the scarecrow's head turn slowly as their car lights hit it, following them with that wide, stitched grin. Sometimes, drivers even report hearing whispers from the cornfield, a man's voice saying, "You shouldn't have come back." So, next time you're on a lonely country road and see a scarecrow standing in the dark, don't stop to look. Don't even slow down, because some things in this world are not meant to protect crops. They protect themselves. And if you're brave enough to hear more true farm horror stories that will keep you awake tonight, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because in Chapter 3 we'll uncover the final tale, one that proves sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not ghosts or spirits, but people who never left the land they once called home. Stay tuned.